Hello there, good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde. Today is 19, October 19.
Yep.
And of course, you know all of the word going round that there is a planned
celebration?
Yeah, well, in a way, because only the living.
It's a public holiday today anyway, so we hope you are having, or you will have a happy holiday today.
Well, can you imagine that? We're celebrating the birth of Holy Prophet today, and a number of people are looking at, excuse me, recognizing the iconic event of last year, October 20. But
iconic.
Don't forget that it's also as a result of that event that the federal government suggested that states should have these judicial panels all over the country. And the Lagos state government, set up one, which concluded its report, its work, its sitting yesterday, and awarded 410 million naira to 70 victims of police brutality. And what's interesting, about 230-something reports, complaints were submitted. And guess what? Only 14 of them had to do with the Lekki protests specifically. So more than 200 cases of police brutality across a number of years.
Yeah.
And so many people got at least some kind of closure one way or the other, and a good number of people got compensated here and there. But what's iconic for me in all of this is really how far so far with all of the moves made by the police.
Yeah, speaking about how far so far, what you see on the screen right now, it's after the 131 sittings. This Lagos State Judicial Panel on Restitution for Victims of SARS-related abuses and other matters. This is the valedictory session, but the chairman of the panel there, Justice Doris Okuwobi, read the decision of the panel. And then that's when she announced that they awarded 148 million naira to 23 deserving petitioners. And from that gathered, our correspondent tells us that brings it up to the sum of 410 million naira that's awarded to 70 victims. Well, yes, she also did say that they've concluded the investigation on the Lekki tollgate shootings, but they're still working on their report, which they expect to be submitted to the governor, who is in turn expected to make that public. So, but of course, the panel did assure petitioners that the recommendations would include compensation to victims of the Lekki tollgate incident, if any was identified. Then according to her, she also says that it will be made, there will also, policemen who were victims at the end of protests, there will be recommendations in that regard as well. So those are some of the highlights. Some persons have talked about, wasn't it the VP who mentioned a couple of days ago how other states should pay victims of fallout of this panel hearing across the states?
Across the states,
they shouldn't just leave it to a few states who pay and other states don't. So it makes rubbish of the entire thing. And remember, the federal government is supposed to take it from there after states conclude theirs as well.
And submit reports to the federal government, at least, see what will come out of that.
That's
especially
right.
Because in the first place, it's a case of police brutality that's been investigated, and the federal government is the one directly in charge of the police, at least in our current, the police generally, SARS and all of that, in all over the nation. But what's a little disturbing is there are still concerns as to what's the voice of the police in all of this. Many are still wondering, look, how have we really been able to onboard some of the recommendations 1 year after? There are those who still believe that, look, there are still cases of police brutality in pockets of places all over the place. And, there is even one making the rounds of a policeman, pulverizing, so to speak, a commuter. And so the questions are still there. Is it that these policemen haven't gotten the memo? Okay, SARS has been disbanded. What's happened with SWAT? the new one that came on board shortly after. Okay, I haven't been, maybe I haven't been noticing.
You expect to see them on the road?
At least we see SARS on the road.
No, but that's not the essence.
Agreed, but there are those who are wondering. Look, what if it's just SARS in a new dress? You know, especially because, I mean, yes, I know we should give the government the benefit of the doubt.
No,
yes.
No, when you say what if, that's not happening at the moment. So,
agreed. There are those who have those concerns, especially when you see the fact that some policemen seem not to have gotten the memo. There are many doing amazing work all over the country. It's just unfortunate that the few bad eggs will always give the whole basket a bad name.
Which is the same thing in every profession.
Yes, which is the same thing in every profession. But you know, when you pay some people to protect lives and property, you expect a little more.
Yes, especially if there are those that you and I meet on the road first thing in the morning, or second or third, or every day, because you find out that the officers who are in the offices, many of them well behaved, they have a lot more training. But the ones out there on the streets, they could use a lot more training, I tell you, because that's where people interface with them. And so that's why they think, no, it can be a lot better. If the senior colleagues do better than that, why can't the ones on the front lines do the same? That's
a good way to put it, training. Another one of the issues last year is the welfare of the police. Yes, there's been a new law. And how far so far with that one as well? Are we seeing the welfare of the policeman, the average policeman, being made better indeed? What are the recommendations that have been made? What work has been done so far? Especially when you backtrack and see that medical personnel are going on strike all over the place, and policemen cannot go on strike. You know, no matter how poorly remunerated their welfare is considered. Those things are still there and still giving people a little bit of a restless night. And I think it is something that we should give attention to, especially when you see that it's the policeman we go to first, no matter what the issue is.
Well, yes, it will always be that way. So that's why there's always a lot of talk and attention. The last summit in Ekiti, they did speak about how important state police. Well, you know, when you call it state police, it kind of stereotypes the entire thing. If they reorganize the policing structure such that you still have those at the federal level, you have those at the state level, if you will, you can have those at the local government level. But that's where the big comma will be, because they will always tell you, well, will the states allow those to function properly? But there's nothing wrong in us as a country debating those matters in the true sense of the word, not the political way, where you hardly get a lot of reasonable voices, with due respect, heard. Yes, that's the way it comes across.
A reality in our face.
Yeah, so who knows? I guess we'll keep that. And also important to mention that we've seen or heard comments, read the comments from the release from the Lagos State Police Command about those who were planning to commemorate the anniversary of the SARS protest, end-SARS protest. And so it's important for them to know there are those who will protest peacefully. The police is expected to ensure that that protest doesn't go awry or people don't come and hijack it. It's usually very funny when you hear the police statement say, don't come out because there's threat that hoodlums may hijack it. What is the function of the police in the first place?
Well, there is also that, I guess that's that's the other perspective that the police may have taken when that news also went out, that the police is saying, you know what, okay, we're going to let it go, but let us know your plan so as to protect you from any incursion by these elements who may want to disrupt the process.
And speaking about which, if the police have provided that protection for the protesters in the first instance, do we think that it would have degenerated to the extent that those who were armed, the hoodlums would have come to disrupt it and attacking people? Would that have happened?
Well, who
knows?
It's here and there, Chamberlain, this particular issue. It's here and there because look at what happened at Alausa. It was a seat of government. It is the seat of government. And the police was there to ensure that everything went the way it was supposed to go. Lekki Toll Gate, I'm not so sure how that went awry. There are those who said that, look, there were pockets of people who were planted here and there to disrupt the process and make the whole process
but we have several images of people who were disrupting property, breaking things in Lagos, in Abuja. No arrest. It appeared as though, you know how men dress in black vehicles, tinted vehicles, who look like corporate service people.
Unfortunately. And it's not just Lekki Tollgate where these happen. I mean, pockets of people, arson all over the nation.
Well, we like our security agencies to do well, because those are the...
And get well paid.
Yeah.
That's very important.
But when there are loopholes, errors there, we've got to point them out.
Absolutely.
So that we all get better, improve, and have a better society. That is why these things are usually pointed out. But that said, let's flip on and take a look at how the dailies are reflected. Some of the items here today. Welcome back. It's time to run you through some of the dailies. We'll start with Nigerian Tribune this morning. Look at the lead story here. Buhari says insecurity declining. 30 feared killed in Sokoto market. FG takes delivery of final batch of Tucano jets. So, well, this context of insecurity declining, you'll get to read about. We'll hopefully talk about it as we progress. Yeah, so you will. Just hang on a minute. You'll see that. But this is a big lead, and you see the context, hopefully, as we progress. So, that's what you see right there. Aggrieved APC members adamant. Take party to court in Oshun. Okrocha spits fire. Party fixes Saturday for aborted Congress in Oyo. That's what I highlighted yesterday, how that didn't happen. So we're looking at the implications of that moving forward. But now you've seen they fixed Saturday for aborted Congress in Oyo. So it will be interesting to see that one. Twitter recommendations to affect other social media platforms. Well, even though they're different companies. Social media.
You don't forget that was referenced yesterday, where Sarah, said to have taken the federal government to court over that issue, saying the surveillance of WhatsApp is an infringement of human rights. Perhaps those are the others that you're talking about there.
Well, fully vaccinated Powell, former U.S. Secretary of State, dies from COVID complications. It was shocking yesterday. A lot of people heard it, given what they know about him, and it just, wow. It was, well, there you go. That's what you see on the front page here today.
The Daily Times newspaper seems to toe the same line as the Nigerian Tribune today. Buhari to journalists. Insecurity in Nigeria declining, not rising. That's the lead of the Daily Times newspaper this morning, and has a few riders. Charges the media to revise its reporting on security challenges. Says bandits will soon no longer have place to hide. FG takes delivery of final batch of Tucano jets. That's the lead of the Daily Times newspaper this morning.
Okay, if we take a look at News Direct, you see that context which we were trying to point out earlier. Don't report insecurity as rising. Do we have News Direct? Yes, we do. So that's Buhari tells journalists 43 dead as bandits attacked Sokoto. So now there was a statement that was released by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Mr. Garbashew, who did say the term rising insecurity should be replaced with the reality of declining insecurity. So that's why you see a lot of all of these. Was that message which was titled President Buhari felicitates with Muslims on Eid al-Maulud, reassures the citizens, reassures that significant gains are being made in combating insecurity. So that's where you got that from. So who knows? Maybe this might come up at the All Editors Conference coming up sometime soon. So you never know this perspective as to the editorial headlines.
So we should have a newspaper called Presidents or something like that. Vanguard newspaper has this next one. 1 year after EndSARS protest. Why protesters are still in detention. Uh-oh. Who saw that coming? That's page 20 of the Vanguard newspaper has that. Bodies of slain policemen yet to be released for burial, according to families. Burned stations yet to be fixed. Policemen working like refugees. This is definitely of concern. 1 year after, you know, how I narrowly escaped hoodlums' attack. Ascribed to a policeman. COVID response slow, yet to rehabilitate 44 burnt police stations. Policemen still lack crowd control devices.
That's a very, very important aspect of the entire thing.
Sincerely. All of this packed on page 20 of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. You know, all the issues that we raised earlier, it would seem like we had a conference with the Vanguard newspaper over this, but that's not a thing like that happened at all. But that's all you have on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. Point you to page 20 where you have all of that. Budget 2022, FJ plans aggressive VAT other tax regime. Yep, page 19 has that one and so many others this morning. Recommendations for Twitter will apply to all social media platforms. You mentioned that earlier. So subscribe to the federal government. More of that on page 8.
Well, the Guardian is next.
Stuff in the sports. I'm sorry. Alcon qualifier. Black Queen set trap for Super Falcons. You took your face away.
To the Guardian? Yeah, I had to prepare for the next one.
That's the Vanguard.
That's why. Now, here's why. Look at the Guardian. Okay, there you go. Aregbeshola's camp drags Buni others to court over APC Congress. So you've not heard the last of that, have you? I will respond to your false allegations in due time, Lai Mohammed tells Kwara governor, because he had alleged that certain monies that were sent to him as governor was hijacked. If I used some words there, you thought, oh dear. But now you see this rider. And then stakeholders finger Amosun in cracks in Oyo APC, other states. Uzodinma conducted birthday party, not Congress, says Okorocha. PDP secretaryship consensus threatened as more aspirants emerge from southeast.
Wait, sorry, a birthday party?
Yeah, you spoke about naming ceremony yesterday. Today there's a birthday party, so they call it different things. So they are the members of their party, so they call it what they will. The press just reports what they say. That's why they're reporters, you know. So that's it. And then I hope they won't say they quoted them out of context tomorrow.
Well, who quotes a party out of context?
The party that's in question.
Party, but wait a minute, it's a political
party. No, the party that made the statement.
The party having a party. I mean,
yeah, birthday party.
It's a party in a party.
Yeah. Security alert, Delta fault inclusion in UK's travel advisory to 12 states. I know it's an advisory, but they're taking that strongly. So there you go. As gunmen kill 30 in Sokoto market, 10 soldiers, 21 others killed by gunmen across Nigeria last week. Gunmen attack police station in Ebonyi, kill cop. Report insecurity as declining, not rising. Buhari begs media. Asking journalists not to report insecurity as rising amounts to gagging the press, says Farumbi. And you know this has been a thing for a while now in terms of how insecurity is reported. It's been a threat. So there's that much of a concern. What everyone just says is tackle it headlong so that there won't be anything to report in the first place.
Well, there are many other things that we have reported. Are they also over-reported or under-reported? The fact that the strike was on for so long, the fact that the poverty figures are still there, the fact that unemployment figures are still there, the fact that the economy is calling for concern every day.
Well, maybe journalism students can tell us, look, in what context or at what point can what you say, a fact, be said to be over-reported?
No, that will not be for students. That will be for professors. The leadership newspaper this morning has this one. Bad roads everywhere, despite 1.12 trillion naira allocation in 5 years. That's the lead of the leadership newspaper this morning, and so many other stories right there on the front page of the paper today.
Which one is the next one then? So maybe we should go. Which one is going to pop up there? So we'll just take a look at that.
Okay.
And see.
Maybe Daily Trust newspaper? Okay, so we have New Telegraph.
Yeah, go ahead then.
All right, New Telegraph has this one. IPOB. FG files fresh charges against Nnamdi Kanu. Story is on pages 2 and 8. Dialogue with IPOB as Mieti Allah produced Kanu. Beg your pardon. Dialogue with IPOB as with Mieti Allah produced Kanu in court. Ohaneze tells government. Ifan Yuba seeks court's permit to visit Kanu in custody with freedom fighters, not kidnappers. IPOB tells DSS. All of that is packed on the front page of the New Telegraph this morning.
Okay, Daily Trust, let's take a look at that one next. How bandits killed dozens in Sokoto market. So, yeah, very sad. Governor says 43 die, blames attacks on Zamfara operation. You know, that's been a thing for some days now in terms of just wondering, you know, how we approach that. But now you see the governor blaming Zamfara operations on, the 43 people who died on that Zamfara operation. The other writer here says different bandits groups mobilized to launch attack. Security challenge surmountable. Sultan. Troops gunned down 10 bandits in Kaduna. So that's with respect to security at the moment. And then you see APC congresses. Implosion looms as losers fight back. Aregbesol's camp goes to court. We are authentic, not parallel. Shekarau's faction. Reconciliation panel appeals to aggrieved members. So these are not just, these are high-ranking members, senior members, as they say, who you thought should know better. But now they're laying claim, they're digging their heels in. So you just wonder how these things will play themselves out.
Independent has on its front page, consumers lament 25% rise in food prices in 1 month.
Wow.
And we're drawing closer to the Yuletide, so just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, there you go. That wraps it up with a look at some of the dailies here today. Just stay with us. We will be back.
The Electoral Act Amendment Bill is one of the most polarizing pieces of legislation in the Ninth Assembly. Clause 52, which refers to electronic transmission of results, split lawmakers in the Senate sharply along party lines to the extent that a division was called on the vote for the first time in the Ninth Assembly.
Say aye. Those against say nay. The nays have it.
After the public vote on Clause 52, the Senate approved that INEC may consider electronic transmission of results, provided the national coverage is adjudged to be adequate and secure by the National Communications Commission, NCC, and approved by the National Assembly. This amendment caused uncertainty in the public space as to the intention of Parliament in promoting credible elections and the fate of electronic transmission of results in future elections.
In my name.
Fast forward to Tuesday's plenary session. The Senate is reversing its decision and is giving electoral umpire INEC the free rein to determine the procedure of transmission of results during elections.
Voting at an election and transmission of results under this bill shall be in accordance with the procedure determined by the Commission.
Those in favor of clause 52 as amended, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it.
The Senate also re-amended Clause 43, 63 and 87. Clause 87 refers to the procedure for party primaries, which the previous amendment prescribes direct and indirect primaries. The latest amendment is prescribing direct primaries for political parties.
I hold the view, Mr. President, that it is more cheaper, less cumbersome to have indirect primary elections.
If this our democracy will be strengthened, if this our democracy will grow, and if we are going to be able to take it to anything close to global best practice standards, it is time for us to adopt direct mode of primaries.
Those in favor of the amendment to clause 87, 4, say aye. Those against, say nay. The nays have it.
Briefing journalists after plenary, the Senate spokesperson throws more light on the re-amendment of the Electoral Act bill.
This will allow INEC, when they have the necessary wherewithal and competence, they don't need to come back for us to introduce electronic voting machine as part of the materials they will use for election.
The Senate's latest amendment of Section 52 to empower INEC to determine the procedure of transmission of results during elections is sure to delight many Nigerians and those in the civic space who have been agitating for a reversal of the earlier decision. Linda Akibi, Channels Television News.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Yes, well, continuing our conversation on that subject matter, we've got Professor Atahiru Jega joining us from Abuja. He's a former chairman of INEC. Good morning, Prof. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Thank you for having me today.
Well, you had spoken about how this was important for the country to take that next step, which perhaps some of these, but lately you've also spoken about how this will, at least to a large extent, address electoral fraud. That is why you were in Ghana not long ago. So could you tell us, speak further on that matter? Because even some INEC officials did say, well, it's not yet to Uhuru. There's still some grounds to cover on this, but do you think this will address to a large extent electoral fraud? Tell us about it.
Thank you very much, Chamberlain. Obviously, as is widely recognized, a good legal framework helps the Electoral Commission to conduct elections freely and fairly and also with integrity. So I think it is a commendable thing that the Senate reversed its position, listening to demands or pressures or reasoning from the civil society organizations. I think this can only augur well for our democracy and in particular for improving the conduct of elections in our country. Obviously, using electronic transmission of results will eliminate what I consider to be the major area in which fraud is perpetrated in the conduct of elections in Nigeria, which is through the manual transmission of results from polling units to the ward level to the different layers of collation up to the constituency level. There used to be diversion with collusion of either security and the INEC officials to change results along the way. So electronic transmission of results has the potential of ensuring that all these, can we say, traditional fraudulent activities in the Nigerian electoral process will be checkmated. So it's a very commendable thing. I think the next thing now is the INEC now has an opportunity to deploy a very robust and cyber secure electronic transmission of results for this objective to be actualized. So frankly, if the National Assembly can generally, and the Senate in particular, can continue to be receptive to genuine concerns of citizens in the manner in which they do their legislation, this country will be the better for it.
Okay, well, you know, Prof, we did speak with Festus Okoye some time ago when this was done, and he had some concerns about some of the areas which he thinks would still be a challenge. So we'd like you to listen to it and get your response.
I think it's quite progressive, but there are still gaps. There are still very serious and fundamental issues that the conference committee needs to take a second look at. One, our collation process is still very, very manual. And this collation process is adumbrated in section 63 of the Electoral Act. It's still very, very manual. Now, if you look at the wordings of clause 52, which talks about electronic transmission of results, and then you look at the wordings of section of clause 63 sub 5, it talks about transfer of results. Now, we must find a nexus between the provisions of section 63 of the Electoral Act that makes the collation of results manual, that makes it the dominant procedure for the collation of results, and then the trajectory between that and the electronic transmission of results. This is because at the end of the day, section 63 still makes it mandatory for a presiding officer who, after sorting out the votes and counting the votes, to transfer those votes into a form prescribed by the Independent National Electoral Commission, and thereafter the presiding officer signs the form and also stamps the form and also gets the party agents to also countersign, and then the presiding officer gives a copy to the party agents and to the security officials if they are there. And then these things are taken under security cover to the next level of collation, which is the registration area collation center, where the collation officer also does the same thing, and it is the results as collected, the figures as collated, that is transferred to the place where declarations are made and returns and results are declared. And these things are also manual. So we must find a nexus between the manually collated results and also the electronically transmitted results, because ultimately, at the end of the day, if a matter goes to court, the question that will be asked is, what are the provisions of the law in terms of collation?
What do you think about that?
No, I think it's a legitimate concern that has been expressed by Mr. Festus Okoye. He is a very good lawyer, and he's also a member of the INEC commission. I think basically what he's talking about is the need to harmonize provisions of the Electoral Act so that one provision does not contradict another, and so that at the end of it, those who either want to cause mischief or who are aggrieved will not exploit the ambiguity of contradictory provisions in the law. So I think it's a very legitimate concern, and I think it behoves on the two committees of the House and Senate that are sitting to harmonize the provisions of the bill to also give serious consideration to this suggestion that he has made. It is all value addition that can really continue to improve the preparations and conduct of elections in our country.
So does that in any way, but to the best of your understanding, Prof, negate the provision in Clause 63 about the counting of votes and forms, which prescribes that the presiding officer shall transfer the results, including total number of accredited voters and the results of the ballot, in a manner as prescribed by the Commission?
You see, obviously at the polling unit and at the collation centers, as Festus Okoye rightly pointed out, the compilation of results is manual. Now, this provision says that the new provision about electronic transmission of results presupposes that as soon as election results are compiled at the, let's say, polling unit, they will be electronically transmitted to the different levels of collation. But if you still have a provision in the law that also emphasizes the technical aspects of manual transmission of results, then it's going to cause serious ambiguity. Not only ambiguity, may also even cause serious legal challenges. So I think the key issue is harmonization. To ensure a good law should not carry any provisions that contradict others. I mean, all provisions should be consistent and should be seamless rather than contradictory. And I think it's a very important demand. There is no doubt that we have to go in the direction of electronic transmission of results. And where there is any provision that can affect or negate or constrain that effort to transmit results electronically, those provisions need to be carefully looked at and the necessary amendments also executed.
So to what extent do you see this achieving the ultimate intention of addressing electronic fraud, voting fraud, if these provisions are not addressed as they have been pointed out?
I think if I understand the position made the points made by Festus Okoye, there are going to be remarkable constraints, even legal challenges, because of the ambiguity in this regard. You know, frankly, as I have said earlier on, it's a legitimate concern. It needs to be addressed, and this can be addressed at the level of harmonization by the committee that has been set up by the National Assembly to do so. But we should not encumber electronic transmission of results. Is the way to go. It will definitely improve, remarkably improve the integrity of the conduct of elections. It will eliminate many of the traditional methods through which fraud is perpetrated and the integrity of elections in Nigeria undermined. You know, so really the National Assembly need to pay attention to this very, very important issue that has been raised.
How hopeful are you, Prof, that the Harmonization Committee will produce, you know, the kind of position that everyone is expecting?
Well, you see, I'm a remarkably optimistic person, and we keep hope alive. And I believe that the members of this committee, responsible senators, And they are part and parcel of the decision of Senate to reverse its position with regards to electronic transmission of results and to accept the need to transmit our results electronically. So I think they know that they are now duty-bound to do whatever is necessary to ensure that another clause in the laws does not undermine this very, very important provision which the Senate has now agreed, which we can now say the National Assembly has actually agreed to. So we have to keep hope alive. We have to keep urging the members of the National Assembly in this harmonization committee to recognize that they cannot allow any ambiguity in the legal provision or any contradictory provisions to undermine this very, very important decision that has been taken.
Well, Prof, I know you also said that since 2012, the INEC had been working on some of these provisions, robustly with software, trying to see that we improve. But there were some concerns that have been raised, and I think will always be raised, about possibility of hitches here and there. So if, at the end of the day, we achieve 60, 70% of this transmission, can it be ultimately be deemed to have been substantial compliance, or won't it raise a lot more concerns and uproar about how those challenges have affected elections?
Well, I have absolutely no doubt that INEC has been piloting electronic transmission of results with commendable results. And I think what this provision of the law will do is to further ginger them up in terms of really now being more focused on how to deploy a very effective technology for sound electronic transmission of results. I believe that between now and 2023, as they continue piloting what they already have, we would be able to have a very good, robust system to transmit results competently and commendably. Now, obviously, when you are dealing with technology, particularly in environments such as ours, which are technologically challenged, because we don't make the technology, we rely on others, we have to also devote a lot of time and energy to trying to learn the know-how. So there are bound to be challenges, but we should be, I keep arguing, countries like ours need to be satisfied with what I call incremental positive changes. If we can move from manual to electronic, and even if initially there are challenges, we should be able to really make substantive value additions which will add and improve the integrity of our electoral system. So I have argued before, and I will say it again, there is no country that does a perfect electronic transmission of results, either because of network coverage or because of cyber security issues and hacking, and so on and so forth. But the important thing is that if you are committed to it and you diligently try to do it and you get good cyber security and you train your people well and you have a robust technological software and hardware for it, then obviously you will make remarkable substantial gains out of it. So I keep saying, and I believe that it's possible in 2023 for INEC to be able to do what I can call an A grade in the electronic transmission of results. The objective should be to do it 100%. But if we can get 90 or even 80 or even 70, it's still an A. And we should be happy with that first time around. And we should keep on improving in that regard. But our fear of failure should not really prevent us from trying something new, something that clearly is the way to go, that all over the world is what is being done. because of the recognition of how important it is to the conduct of free and fair elections and the elimination of fraud in the electoral process. So we've taken the decision now. I'm happy about the decision by the National Assembly. The Harmonization Committee should now do the needful in terms of addressing some of these concerns that are being raised by INEC. I must say that in creating a legal framework for the conduct of elections, it's very, very important that the National Assembly listens to the recommendations of INEC. And I must say that I have just seen a report recently which has done an analysis of the recommendations submitted by INEC to the National Assembly and what the National Assembly has now done in this bill. You know, many Nigerians do not know that out of about 37 specific recommendations made by INEC, the National Assembly now in this draft bill has accommodated about 25 and fully accepted them, adopted them, and about 6 they modified, you know, and it's only about 6 that they have actually rejected, which we hope perhaps in the next cycle of reforms, legal reforms, they will now accommodate them. They should listen to INEC, which is the implementing agency of the legal provision as well as the operations of the conduct of elections, because whatever they say will be evidence-based and with a view to improving the integrity of the process. So it's a commendable process as a whole. I think what almost undermined this very good effort by the National Assembly was what appeared as a self-serving attempt to jettison some of the very good recommendations by INEC, especially the electronic transmission of result. Now that they have accepted it, is to carefully look at the other provisions that may constrain its implementation, and then we are good to go. So let's keep hope alive, and let's hope that members of this harmonization committee will do the right thing to satisfy the aspirations of Nigerians for free, fair, credible, and elections with integrity.
Perhaps all of that, you know, inhibition initially was due to the information available at the time, because part of the argument on the floor of the House and the Senate was that reception at some of the interior localities were quite low. But hopefully that's been resolved now, especially with the other agency working with INEC that you mentioned, which in this case is NCC. But one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, Prof, is I'm just wondering, I mean, how all those forms are now going to look electronically from EC8A and from all the various forms. Does that mean that all of them are now going to be in electronic form, or exactly how would you expect that it will go?
You see, fundamentally, all over the world, except where they use electronic voting, all over the world, unless they are using electronic voting, at the polling unit, the tabulation of results is manual. You know, but then as soon as the results are tabulated, they are certified by the returning officer and co-signed by the agents of the political parties that are there, then they are inputted, you know, either by a laptop or whatever electronic device is used, and then sent electronically to the next level of collation. You know, so as far as that is concerned, I really do not see what the problem is. You know, so yes, INEC may still have to look at some forms which it has to design, you know, and many of these forms, it has to be recognized, will now have to be under the purview of the Electoral Commission in terms of the operations with guidelines as to how returning officers can use them. You know, but we should not really make a simple matter very difficult. It does not mean that once you say you are transmitting results electronically, then everything at the polling unit has to be done electronically. I don't think that is really what electronic transmission of results entails. What it entails is to simplify the way in which the results from where voting takes place to where collation of results takes place is simplified, and you remove the human agency in terms of physically carrying that result from one place to another, such that it can be altered, it can be changed, and so on and so forth. You know, so if we want to do everything electronically, that's where electronic voting comes in. You know, because once you do electronic voting, you know, then obviously it means that a voter touches a note on an electronic device, you know, and then maybe there may be a paper trail dropped in a box, you know, but as soon as he touches, his vote is automatically collated and then transferred to a collation center. Then that really becomes purely a technology-based process, you know. But I think that we are a bit not as prepared with electronic voting as we are with electronic transmission of results. We are good to go with electronic transmission of results, you know, but electronic voting, first of all, since the prohibition has just been lifted, it's now time for INEC to begin to look around for what electronic voting technology is out there, which is adaptable to Nigeria, then begin to source it, then begin to pilot it, you know, before then you can begin to think of how to start deploying. And even electronic voting, it doesn't mean you have to start deploying it all over the country in all polling units at the same time. You can also, for example, once we are ready to begin, having found the technology, having trained the personnel, having acquired the equipment, we may do it in phases. You can start with large urban centers, for example, you know, and if you can do electronic voting in the cities where there is higher literacy rate compared to the villages where, you know, so all these are things that INEC will now sit and begin to review and to plan appropriately now that the law says they can do electronic voting. But electronic transmission, they have already been piloting it, they have already acquired competence, you know, and it is easier to deploy than electronic voting. And I have no doubt that INEC is good to go now with electronic transmission of results.
All right, Prof, we'll go to break and then we'll return and get your perspective on maybe one or two other clauses and then what is playing out in the political parties concerning internal democracy. Do join us again. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, Professor Tahir Jaga is still with us in our studios in Abuja. Well, Prof, when we did ask political parties about getting their, as a result of some of these amendments, particularly with direct voting, direct primaries, I beg your pardon, some of the parties thought, well, they would rather have INEC to come in and help them get their voter registers right, because they don't think that within the political parties they can come to that amicable solution to that challenge. But INEC themselves, Mr. Okoye did say, well, INEC, it's an internal matter for political parties. They don't see why they should come in that regard. What do you think about some of these things? Should we let the political parties or make laws to ensure INEC come in, or just make laws to allow the political parties comply with these laws for voter registration update first, such that they can then properly practice the direct primaries within their parties?
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. First of all, I agree with Festus Okoye. I think that the organization of primaries and the conduct of primaries is purely a party affair. And if the law requires parties to do direct primaries, then it is the responsibility of the parties to prepare the list of their registered members and to also make it publicly available and for INEC to be able to monitor the way they conduct their primaries. The responsibility of INEC, as provided in the legal provisions, is to monitor. And obviously they can do this, and it will not be necessary. It is not even desirable to make INEC now be the one to either conduct the primaries for them or to even compile their register of voters. You see, the problem is that Nigerian political parties have not paid sufficient attention to their primary objective of mobilizing citizens on the basis of a clearly defined party program or manifesto or with a clear ideology, and getting people to register as members. So many, in fact, I recall that since around 2011, in INEC's engagement with political parties, INEC had been advising political parties, develop a register of your members and keep it. But because our parties are dominated by the so-called godfathers and money bags, they are not interested in membership because they think that they can use money to field the candidates they want and to get the candidates they want elected one way or the other. So the issue of having members who are active members, registered members, was not their concern. So now, if they are required to do direct primaries, you can't do direct primaries unless you have a register of voters within your party. And only you as a party should develop your own register, but it has to be a register transparently compiled to enable INEC, when it comes to monitor, to know who are people qualified to vote in the direct primaries. I'm not addressing the issue of whether the legal provision for direct primaries is good or bad, because it's a matter of opinion. And my own personal opinion actually is that perhaps it is not yet time to require political parties to do direct primaries. I think there are certain things, because as we all say, these are internal affairs of parties. Of course, we are all worried about the way indirect primaries are conducted in political parties. They are abused. But the same manner in which they are abused through indirect primaries, again, so long as political parties do not take their responsibilities serious, they are also bound to truncate some of these requirements. I only hope that while there are serious sanctions for non-compliance, if there are serious sanctions for non-compliance, then perhaps that can pressure political parties to now begin to do the right thing. So, no, INEC should not be made to either conduct the primaries for political parties. It should only monitor, keep records of what they observe, and also the parties themselves have to create their own registers, because I don't see how any political party can do direct party primaries without a properly compiled membership register.
Well, Prof, it's a little befuddling, when, we hear that the political parties cannot conduct peaceful or, coherent political direct primaries within themselves, because the question that rises up on my mind is, 22 years after, doesn't this in a way spell a level of political or democratic immaturity if the political parties cannot smoothly coordinate their activities beginning with, how many are we in this family?
I think I will be a bit tough than you. I will say actually it's an indication of political rascality. It's not immaturity. You know, it's deliberate. You know, people have captured and controlled political parties for self-serving objectives. So no energy is devoted to organizing political parties appropriately as political parties should be organized. You know, so it used to be so-called money bags and godfathers. They are still there in many places, still very influential and effective. And now it's even state governors who deploy state resources to control political parties in their states to decide which candidate would be fielded, and do not pay attention to the criteria, the appropriate criteria of selection of candidates and recruitment of people to be fielded for elections. It's all self-serving or driven by self-serving objectives. So it's political rascality. 22 years trying to democratize, we still have not freed ourselves from this overbearing control of people who just use political parties as special purpose vehicles for winning elections by hook or by crook. You know, so we do have a long way to go, and that is why many of us are beginning to think that these so-called dominant parties are really a huge, not only a huge disappointment, you know, but are a drag on the democratization process of our country. And that's why if we want to make substantive progress, they say leopards don't change their spots. Waiting and hoping for change within these political parties, I regret to say, will be very, very, very long in coming. And that's why many of us are pushing on the need for a totally new purpose vehicle for democratic elections, for democratic party organization, and for ensuring that we really move in the right direction of both democratic development and electoral integrity.
So, as things currently stand now, can this NPV upstage the PDP or APC as presently constituted?
It's possible. It's going to be very hard work. It's going to be very difficult work, but it's not impossible for this to happen. You know, so it's all the attitude and the organization and the commitment that and the selflessness that people bring to this. You know, so it's possible, and there are many Nigerians who are committed to that, because we can't keep on muddling through our challenges. We have to find ways to begin to address these challenges that are dragging us back, that are constraining us from moving forward as a modern nation state, so-called giant of Africa, but clearly crippled and not making any substantive changes or impact, and largely because of the poor quality of leadership that we have. You have people who really are not selfless, who are not visionary, who are not thinking about the future for our children and our grandchildren, who are just thinking about here and now and what they can acquire by controlling state resources. So we really have to change that orientation, and I don't see the scope of doing that within the existing so-called two dominant parties. I am not saying there are no good people in these parties, but I'm just saying that it's a very bad tendency that has dominated these parties, and the good ones who are in these parties have no scope to bring the kind of immediate change and relief that this country requires.
So, in what form should this new purpose vehicle take? Should it adopt an already existing political party and then run with it? And should they be targeting 2023 or 27?
Well, there are many ways to do this, but I don't think it's something that is, those who are really concerned and who want to bring these positive changes need to get together and discuss the possible ways and the ways, the pros and cons, and then move forward. You know, but I will not claim to know what the solution is. I may have ideas that I can contribute in a larger discussion on these issues, you know, but clearly that has to be the objective because it is 1 in 100 chance. For example, for PDP suddenly saying, okay, now we want to make amends, we want to turn around, you know, and jettison all the things we've done in the last 21 or 22 years and start to do something new for Nigeria, for the people. You know, ditto for APC, I regret to say, and you can see the evidence in the so-called party primaries that they have conducted recently. You know, it's very fractious, it's very disorganized. It's still, it's either the governors trying to manipulate or other people who felt excluded trying to find voice. You know, and who knows? Many of these parties may explode or implode because of some of these crises associated with their primaries. You know, so we hope for the best. I am sure that many patriotic, honest, decent Nigerians are not happy to see these kinds of perpetual political crises and wranglings that take place in political parties and in the arena of governance. You know, so we hope for the best and we have to keep hope alive. But apart from just hoping, people can no longer sit and watch what is going on. People have to become more politically active and people have to become more engaged in finding lasting solutions to our political crisis.
So do you think that it's going to be easy or difficult for maybe this, still on this same new purpose vehicle, to address this question of national political party ideology, the national ethos, given the way some of these politicians have taken advantage of our fault lines such that it runs deeper these days than perhaps a lot of people have already known?
Yes, no doubt, Chamberlain, the fault lines are there and they have been deliberately created, you know, but they are surmountable. I won't sit here and say it is easy, you know, but as I keep saying, it may be difficult, but it is not impossible. What you need is focus, commitment, passion, selflessness, you know, and a vision of what needs to be done. You know, and there are many Nigerians who really are focused on that, and it is achievable, it's doable, you know, but as they say, Rome is not built in one day. What you need is positive changes, but a situation in which you take 2 steps forward and you make 3 steps backward, obviously it's like motion without movement, and that is a kind of situation, regrettably, that any serious analyst of Nigerian politics and the trajectory that we've taken in the last 22 years would see, you know, and no nation progresses like that. You know, yes, people can make atonements, people can make, can change, you know, but as I have said, leopards hardly, if ever, change their spots. You know, so you can't rely on those to bring positive changes. And we have, in a country of 200+ million, you know, we have so many Nigerians who are out there who, given the opportunity, young men, young women, you know, can really help galvanize this kind of positive change that our country requires. You know, so we just have to keep hope alive, you know, and keep emphasizing that it is possible, you know, it is not impossible. It may be difficult, but difficulties can be surmounted. If we fear difficulties, then we can't do anything, you know, and I think that's what should really keep us going. But we cannot continue in the manner that we have been doing in the last 22 years. It will take us nowhere. That is very, very clear.
I'm actually amazed, Prof, when you say that the the fault lines were deliberately created. Because if those fault lines are there, I'm wondering what's the inroad for the young people, for the youths who are supposed to be, and they've been hearing it for donkey years, leaders of tomorrow. Many of them are raring to go. What then? It would seem like these fault lines are landmines for them if the young people get into politics without them being addressed.
Yeah, you see, as I said, the fault lines are deliberately created through the mobilization of ethnic, religious, and communal identities, rather than through forging a national identity and ensuring that citizenship rights are primary for every citizen, regardless of where he or she lives in our country. You know, equality of opportunity is important. You know, justice and equity are important. And the rule of law, of course, is important. And unfortunately, in each of these indicators in the last 22 years, our country has performed awfully. And largely on account of the kind of leadership, you know, that has not paid attention to protecting and defending citizenship rights, ensuring, guaranteeing equality of opportunity for all citizens wherever they live in this country, ensuring that the rule of law actually works, you know, nobody is above the law, you know, and also utilizing the massive resources that this country has been opportune to have, and addressing the fundamental needs and aspirations of our people. You know, rather, people in leadership positions either themselves steal these resources or look the other way while others steal them, or are incapable or incompetent to prevent people who are vandalizing our state resources. So the young men and women obviously are either not supported to have the kind of education and enlightenment that they require, or even those who have been able to get education have no job opportunities. You know, so now with mobilization of religion and ethnicity and the poverty that bedevils people, it's very easy to fall into the mobilization of these fault lines. You know, so what is required really is to have people who will enlighten, who will educate, who will mobilize our citizens to begin to recognize that we have a country, we have citizenship rights, and a citizen is a citizen. All this talk about indigent versus citizenship rights, you know, are really unimaginable in any serious society with a serious leadership that has a vision of building a strong country that can compete effectively globally. You know, so really the mindset, regrettably, the mindset of our politicians has been such that to win elections, you don't need credible elections. All you need is to mobilize people on religion or on ethnicity, and then to deploy resources, money, mostly money that is stolen. For example, in this amendment bill, the National Assembly is proposing that somebody to be president can spend up to 2 billion naira. You know, a governor can spend up to 1 billion. A senator can spend up to 500 million. Where are they getting these resources? Where will a candidate get these resources? You know, if not for a Dangote or an Otedola or such rich people, you know, who can have that kind of money to contest for presidential election? So as I keep saying, they are turning democracy into plutocracy, government of the rich. You know, so there are many things that really need to be addressed, and only good visionary leadership that is selfless, that is passionate, that is patriotic, is committed to Nigeria as one country, and can deploy national resources to actualize that, can move this country forward. And really, it is the way to go, and it's possible to do it. It's not easy, it's not a walkover. It requires a lot of planning, a lot of struggle, a lot of mobilization and sensitization, and getting people to come on board. And it may also be long-term.
Okay.
You know, because unfortunately our politicians are only thinking short term, you know, and that's really to move to get out of this crisis that we are.
Okay.
You know, we have to develop short, long, and medium, long-term plans.
All right, let's wind down with this one, Prof. So, will you be willing to throw your hat in the ring and be one of those leaders if the people ask you to?
Well, Chamberlain, I have for long now believed that we have made a mistake by thinking that we can stay on the sidelines and watch what is happening to our country, the so-called sit-down look. I don't think anybody in Nigeria presently that has been educated by the resources of this country, that has held responsibilities in this country, has the luxury to sit and watch the way this country is being destroyed. You know, so we all have to, one way or the other, at different levels, join politics, you know, and contribute to bringing positive changes. I've taken that decision. I've already joined a political party. I'm a member of a political party, and I'm contributing my own bit in trying to make that political party organize properly and mobilize people on the proper framework for engagement in electoral politics. You know, so I'm comfortable and satisfied with that. Anybody who can contribute in any way possible, you know, really, the more we have people contributing, then the better we have in terms of addressing these challenges that confront us or even bedevil our country. So no more sit-down look for anybody, frankly, if we want to get this country forward. We all have to be engaged at the levels that we are comfortable with. For now, I'm comfortable with being a member of a political party and contributing as best as I can to that political party. That does not mean that that political party would have to act alone. It can act in partnership with other political parties in order for us to work together and pool resources and to be able to salvage this country. You know. All
right, then, Professor Atari Uchega, thank you very much indeed for your perspectives this morning.
Thank you so very much for this opportunity.
All right, well, back in a moment. Don't go away.
As a build-up to the next general elections, the ruling All Progressives Congress across the country is organizing state congresses to elect new executives. In Cross River State, Mr. Alphonsus Eba emerges as the state party chairman through a consensus voice vote by party delegates at the UJ Swene Stadium in Calabar, the state capital. Governor Ben Ayade expresses satisfaction over the peaceful conduct of the Congress. He believes that this will ensure that Cross River fully becomes an APC state.
Today we have a party that is not just prepared to continue to sustain power in Cross River State, but actually join hands with our other states to ensure that Nigeria remains an APC country.
The Delta State delegates from across all the local government areas via a voice vote elected Omeni Sobotie as the chairman of the state chapter of the APC. The Deputy Senate President, Senator Ovioma Agege, who was part of the exercise, calls for unity among members.
We're looking forward to reconciliation. Our doors are open until we're able to achieve that unity. We want to continue to stress on those things that bring us together as opposed to those things that divide us.
Oshogbo, the Osun State capital, witnesses parallel congresses as the group loyal to the state governor Boyega Oyetola gather at the Oshogbo City Stadium, where the incumbent party chairman Prince Boyega Famodun emerges victorious via voice votes.
What all of us are praying for at the National Convention, like God has given us today, God will give us the convention.
Governor Oyetola challenges the new party executive to ensure a reconciliatory process that will guarantee unity.
Every delegate must cast his or her votes according to his or her wish. There must be no rancor. It's a party affair. It's an opportunity to select those that will run the affairs of the party for the next 1 year.
Meanwhile, the group loyal to the former governor of the state and Minister of Interior, Rauf Aregbesola, gathered at the Oshogbo-Gbogon Road, with Abdul Razak Salisile emerging as the factional chairman of the APC in the state.
2 of our delegates were injured. We were very lucky because we had concluded our programs, and every necessary step had been taken, necessary things concluded.
For ourselves, the beauty of the place.
The Borno State chapter of the All Progressives Congress, through a consensus, adopts its old executive led by Ali Dalori to continue leading the party for another term of 4 years.
We can see here for ourselves the beauty of the place.
The Congress, which held at the Ramat Square, Maiduguri, has in attendance the state governor Babagana Zulum, his predecessor, Kashim Shettima, amongst other party stakeholders.
I will assure you, we will not fail you and your members, and we will not fail all the members of the APC promoted in general.
The APC Congress in Kano State held at the Sani Abacha Indoor Stadium, where Governor Umaru Ganduje and over 3,000 delegates from the 44 local government areas were in attendance. The state party chairman, Abdullahi Abbas, was returned as chairman via a consensus. The governor, who describes the process as peaceful, says stakeholders should disregard any other congress in the state.
Any other location where you have pockets of disgruntled elements performing a similar function is regarded as illegal.
Meanwhile, the parallel faction of the APC in Kano, led by Senator Ibrahim Shekarau and Tijani Jobe, conducted another state congress at Janguza in Tofa local government area, where Amadou Zago emerged parallel chairman.
I thank all of you, and I will assure you that being as chairman in Kano State APC, I will not let the party to fail down.
After these state congresses, the attention of the party now shifts to the national convention. Many would be watching, however, how the party is able to resolve the emergence of parallel congresses in several states.
Yeah, welcome back. So we'll be talking about the APC Congress, even though we wanted to talk about the PDP Congress separately as well, but we didn't see our invited guests. For that, we do have Moazu Magaji, who is a former member of the APC Presidential Campaign Council. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Well,
good morning, Chamberlain. Nice having me.
Yeah, thank you. Both political parties seem to have this challenge facing themselves, but your party even widely reported today that even high-ranking members have gone to court, which is something that the party would have thought, wait a minute, we thought we had the rule and an understanding that you're not supposed to take us to court on some of these matters. But even in Kano, for instance, look at that, 2 groups laying claim to the same primaries. What in the world is going on?
Well, it's a season of dynamism and dynamics and changes in the political parties. It's a season that basically throw out the space for people to position themselves for the eventual contest that is coming. However, you recall that, Chamberlain, we've discussed this here, that consensus, or whatever you call it, have principles of equity. And whatever you do, when the party said that it prefers consensus, there was a landmine there, and we highlighted those landmines. And we did say that that consensus gives the opportunity of people in power to basically select individual they prefer to see as the leader and basically declare that person through a process that may seem like a democracy. And this is what we're harvesting today. Unfortunately, in our party, we have mentioned that the state congresses will determine the fate of this party. And today, we have to seriously face the repercussion of some of this power that we've given to the state chief executives or principals that are in Abuja, that have favored candidates, that are not willing to subject these candidates to the popular decision of the people. This is a party that was formed on a progressive platform. This was the party that actually declared that the direct primaries is the most likely means through which people will actually vote candidates in an internal democratic system. Now we have moved from direct primaries, which is basically the popular way people can express their opinion about individuals, to a consensus. Basically, even jumping the delegate system. The delegate system is the in-between between direct primaries and the consensus system. You mentioned parallel primaries. It is all over Nigeria. Over 24 states have multiple leaderships today. There are states with even 3 leadership today. You've just heard from the video clips you played that the governor of Kano State is calling 2 senators and many House of Rep members who disagreed with his choice as disgruntled, and their exercise is illegal. Now, this is not reconciliatory. This is not how consensus can be built. Kano have done primaries, and there are 2 very distinct primaries, and 2 chairmen emerged. However, one of the chairmen, who is already a sitting chairman, had no consensus. Nobody pulled out for him. I had Harvard Anzago is saying that he's the elected chairman. I sincerely believe he is illegitimate. I know 2 candidates that withdrew for him and basically agreed on the consensus process. And irrespective of that, he was subjected to the process of election with delegates that voted for him. So, and there are a lot of these in many states. APC now have 3 challenges to face. One, there are states that have their primaries postponed because of the likelihood of violence. So there is an eruption already even before the primaries. And 2, there are states with multiple leadership that have emerged. Just like you mentioned, I'm mentioning, and there are multiple challenges around the reconciliation because these functions represent the pillars upon which the party basically rests in those states. Then, of course, the last one is the fact that there are states who have managed to, because of the technique or the respect of the leader, managed to bring that consensus in the room. It may not be entirely democratic, but here the leaders have gotten their members to accept all of that. The other thing also is that we have to be very careful going forward, because whatever we do now, there is a tendency that is emerging, and the tendency is the clear split of the party. If you trace the history of our party, it was a merger. It was a merger between contending political functions, parties. The ACN, for example, the NPP, part of ABGA, then CPC came in, and then new PDP joined. Whatever you do, we just had one president. Less than 8 years, you must consolidate those functions and not dismantle them. Now, what I see going on now is the clear choice of some elements within the merger to basically decide to take the party and run away with it. And all the protests and all the dimensions we are witnessing is as a result of reactions from the other partners in this merger to basically ensure that they protect their space. Now, the danger of this is that you might force yourself, because you're in government and you hold public office, to take away this party space. However, you may not be able to get away with the membership base. Because the membership base is a contribution of the various political groups that came together and formed this party. And also, APC have just led. And this is the first time we've been leading, we've been in opposition. And many of our members are complaining that we have not been able to demonstrate the capacity to create shared consensus in management of our victory. Now, this is the first phase. The best we could do is to consolidate on this partnership by ensuring that there is equity, inclusiveness, and fair participation of all the parties that participate in that merger, with a view to creating a united front to face the opposition party that are now regrouping and realigning. If we do that, then we will learn from the mistake that we have made the first time, because there's no way you can get it right the first time. Then we will basically iterate those mistakes into ensuring that we have a better governance. However, right now, what I'm seeing and what I'm witnessing and what I'm hearing is that we are basically creating more of these problems than solutions.
So from what you've just highlighted, that clearly the party is in opposition with itself. But you say that this is at the very base, the foundation of the political party, where those groups that came to agree, some want to take the party and run away. But now, that is something that strikes at the heart of the political party. So do you, having highlighted all of these challenges, is this something you think that at the end of the day, because politicians always say they're optimistic that these things will be addressed, do you see them being addressed to the extent that you're not going to be limping towards the convention, as it were?
This is a very critical question, Shambly, because it is the culture within the political party that determines whether the party have the capacity to patch up this kind of challenges. Now, I will tell you something. There is always a saying in our political meetings that we are better off as opposition party, and PDP is always better off in governance. However, we switched role. So we all are struggling right now. APC is struggling in governance, PDP is struggling in opposition. The problem is sharing space is key to creating inclusiveness in political democracy. And most of the things I see and the moves I see, it's about taking space and not sharing it. And if we don't develop the culture of sharing space and coordinating ourselves and respecting each other, then we will limp to election. And when we limp to election, we have two other challenges. APC as a party promised a lot of changes. And the reality on ground basically challenged our leadership in delivering the promises of those changes. Now that means that the ordinary people who worked and toiled to elect us into power have been expecting a lot from us. And the reality of economic challenges and dynamics of power have not been able to give us the leverage to deliver on those promises. That is a challenge in itself, that our political base is actually now deciding whether we have delivered on our promises. The second thing is the personalities that basically came into this merger with their support base. Take, for example, President Muhammadu Buhari came with 12 million votes over time, and His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, two principal parties in the merger, came with a very strong strategic and political organization with the resources and committed those resources and experience to the success of the merger. Now, today, these two functions, I am sorry to say, are at loggerhead. You hear parallel primaries by supporters of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. You hear people going to court by his supporters in the same APC. If we are losing the cohesion of these two principles and the unity of purpose that we have created in the merger, then definitely that's a second layer challenge. The third one is that we are inviting people that the masses have rejected in 2015 election, celebrating them as new entrants to our party. I am afraid to say this may backfire on us because the concept of change by the ordinary Nigerians means that there are certain characters that they view as not friendly to their well-being and to the management of their resources, and they rejected them. Now we are going back to our vomit and inviting these people, taking them to villa, or even visiting them in their homes and pleading with them to come back and join the space that people created for change. I think this will backfire on our party because the elites in our party are now being displaced by the elites from opposition, and the ordinary people are being ignored because of economic challenges that we are unable to turn around for productive and prosperity of our ordinary people. The three combinations of leaving behind our legs, which is the ordinary people, and chopping up our head, which is the merger partners, and injecting foreign organs into our body, which is the opposition people we are inviting, will not spell well for us unless we do a serious soul-searching review.
Concerning that third one that you just mentioned, I'm just wondering, what should the APC have done when other people say they want to join the party? Send them back? Is it against the law for people to defect into another party?
No, actually party is about addition, not subtraction. It is the way you receive them, is the prominence you attach to them, is the propagation of that campaign that says you do not actually have confidence in your own principles, ideology, and platform. When people from opposition parties who have done things that people rejected in an election are coming back to you, You tell them to go back to their constituency. You tell them to go and atone for their sin in their local environment. You don't take them to our presidential villa, for example. You don't take a whole gamut of governors and visit opposition. I'm pleading with them. I've joked and I said, it's only in Nigeria that a ruling party, after 8 years, have not been able to produce a worthy successor, have to go to an opposition party and plead with them to borrow them candidates. This is scandalous for us. Believe me, this is absolutely serious matter in a political democracy. If, for example, we are unable to hold the ground of this party, then let us also slide back to opposition and learn from our mistakes. But we cannot just basically betray the trust of the ordinary people that voted for change and then go back and invite these same people that caused this change to take place.
Well, you've said quite a number of things that are very, very interesting, one of which is that politicians should go back to their wards. And I'd like us I'd like you to take us to the ward level. What kind of politics, in your opinion, happens at the ward level? As we all say, everyone, but the president, the national leader of your party that you mentioned, everyone has only one vote at the ward level. But then when you look at some of the issues that have arisen from the congresses that has held, most of it is always from the ward level. But many times we look at, what's happening at the top. What do you think the problems we're talking about here could be something that's arisen from the ward level, or is just something that's happened from the top and cascades down?
No, it's not ward level. The ward level is on paper. It's an institutional structure of the party on paper. I will tell you something. I just came in and my mentor, Professor Jega, was discussing the fault lines, the challenges of our democracy. And I listened. The issue here is simple, that the political parties are formed and unfortunately on a democratic system with a very clear constitution. But when people take position of authority, either in the party or in the government, we default back to our traditional emirate system or kingship. And I will explain what I mean. That individuals that wins election don't seem to believe that they will be subjected to the judgment of the people in the next election. What they do is basically organize a process of dictating the outcome of things right from the ward level. And because there is economic challenges, which Professor Jega has highlighted, there is the tendency of people to just wait for instruction. There is a tendency of people to just belong to this ruling power. There is a tendency of people to hope that the resources will reach them if they behave well. So when leaders, especially at state level, like governors, for example, or at national level, like the leaders of the party, give instructions, you have no right to challenge those instructions. It's not democracy. Nobody can say no to that. If you do, believe me, in a matter of 48 hours, you are out. You'll be disgraced, you'll be denied, and in fact, you'll be economically starved. So the ward level is not at all institutionally strong. Neither is the local government. So just like we're suffering from autonomy of local government in governance, there's even worse lack of autonomy of local government and ward in our political structure. Our democracy is collapsing before our own very eyes. We are replacing it with an emirate system where you meet in the north particularly, you see political leaders sitting on a chair and everyone is sitting on the floor gallivanting around these leaders as if they are worshiping them. This is not democracy. Democracy was not created to enslave people. It is created to empower people and liberate them and give them the freedom and the respect that they deserve as citizens. Now, you have talked about this ward structure. Honestly speaking, I go to my ward and I ask the chairman, what is your plan? And he said, I'm waiting for instruction from the local government. And the local government chairman, I said, what do you do? Oh, he said, well, the governor is going to call us and tell us what to do. I am telling you, the internal democracy of our party is not working as it should. There are fault lines, like Professor Jega said, and the challenges are enormous. However, there is a ray of hope. Believe me, I have always said this, that at some point you cannot hold this together. Unless we recognize that democracy is for the people and is by the people and it's meant to serve the people then definitely we will definitely lose the focus of how the democracy was built and how people can come into power. And if we do that, then we will lose the authority that is vested on people when they are constitutionally elected into party or into office.
Is this a challenge that bedevils your political party, or is such that affects other political parties, because these people come from different parts of the country, for instance, and then they belong to the political party secondarily, having come from a particular area? So is this a challenge that you think this is why the country seems to be struggling with achieving certain things, or achieving at least the barest minimum of our potential?
I think it's a combination of two things. In my political party, there is an issue of inexperience in terms of how to manage the success that comes from political election. And there is the issue of lack of basically coalescing into an organization that we can call a political party. I will tell you, we're still an association. There are clusters of interest groups all over our party that are meeting in all different forums and mapping out the same exact outcome that the party shall sit down and map out. Now, that is the tendencies that is creating all these frictions and cracks. In the other parties, I think it is culture. That's the second thing. The culture of Nigeria and Africa that came from the kingship and emirate system around power is basically coming back deeply into our democracy. So, and the culture of followers that tend to hero worship leaders and without realizing the power that democracy vested in the people, it's also coming back. And these two are gelling together and creating a powerful block of minority out of 200 million people that hold on to power and promise heaven and earth to people around them and use all sort of means to fend away any sort of challenge and opposition, including violence, including money, including threats. This is a very dangerous trend in our democracy, and I think the elites of this country, both parties, need to come together and have an elite consensus about the survival of our democracy before the 2023 election.
Yeah, well, when you say for your political party is inexperience, well, yes, they're coming together, then they're in the ruling party, but the components of that party, can they equally be said to be inexperienced? For instance, the president is not inexperienced politically. The vice president, also not inexperienced politically. The president of the Senate, the speaker of the House of Representatives, the party leader, former governor of Lagos State. Different persons in different positions. These are people who have pedigree, as it were. They've been to certain areas, they've got experience in certain field. And so what part of that can that also be said to be inexperience?
So the inexperience is in the ability to gel into a united, cohesive, inclusive political organization with a common goal and common vision. The president stands still as President Muhammadu Buhari, and basically individuals see him as individual, believe me. And the vice president, experienced as he is, I wonder how much action and space he commands in today's government, and largely due to political issues. The Senate presidents and the speaker are very experienced politicians, and I wonder how many times the party call for a meeting of these principal officers in government and say, where is the way forward? All the people you've mentioned, except the leader, are in government, and they are busy trying to deliver the promise of governance, which is first time for our party, which also brings inexperience. The most experienced person, however, is the leader of the party, Ahmed Bola Tinubu. And unfortunately, the internal dynamics of the party and the lack of cohesion of the various interest groups has not allowed that experience to benefit the party. It did work well for us in 2015 when we were listening and we were tapping and we were leveraging on the experience. But today, we've taken a completely different dimension and different direction that other people who just came in 4 years, 8 years, or less than that, believe that the combination of office and power can give them political experience. In my honest opinion, the two are different. You can come into power and exercise excellently well the power on behalf of the people and still not be able to control your political space and struggle with it. And that is exactly why we are seeing all these functions in the state. The ability of the state chief executive to exercise the dual combination of political power and political office is limited.
Which leads to this question.
Even the success.
Just 1 second, if you don't mind me asking. The last statement that you just made now leads to this question that I want to ask. Hitherto, in our previous political experiences, the First Republic, Second Republic, and Third Republic. Second and Third Republic, particularly because I was old enough to know that the national party structures, the party structures were much stronger than the political office holders at the time. I would remember the national chairman of the ruling party in the Second Republic and the national chairman of the ruling parties in the Third Republic, the SDP and the NRC. But it would seem like that it's a lot different now. What's your take? Are you suggesting in any way that we should go back to that system?
Actually, we are there. It's only the actors that have not allowed the institution of democracy, that is the political party, to function. And I think this started when we had a military leader that we invited and became a political leader. He was not able to actually tolerate the independence of political party. And it was clear from the history of Obasanjo's regime how he basically meddled into the party affair. That culture has not left us, even when we still transited. If you look at when Shagari was there, the national party leader is as very well known as the president, very powerful. And we transited to this mix of military political regime during IBB. And IBB tends to play a political military leader, and he respects the boundaries of democracy and institutionalizes it. But somehow the military culture never left him, and you could see the end result of his regime. And now we are in the democracy. We still have a president who had a military background, but somehow this president gave space for people to act. The problem is the space is taken by many people, and the leadership required to coordinate that can only be available from a political leader like Bola Ahmed Tinubu. While the president is leading the country, I believe sincerely Bola Ahmed Tinubu could have led us into a very cohesive, coherent transition that will create a common vision for our party and organize ourselves for victory. Right now, we're going to be struggling a lot, and there is need, like you rightly pointed out, for political parties to be political parties, the motherboard of all contestants and candidates, and when you win election, there is a missing link here. The party do not represent anything, do not have any policy, do not have any manifesto that we will look at and say, oh, Republicans Party or Democrats, this is what we expect, social welfare or businesses will grow. Everything goes in our major parties today. And with this, there will be no clear deepening of democracy.
All right, then, Mosu Magaji, former member, APC Presidential Campaign Council, thank you very much indeed for your perspectives this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Well, the first mail. We couldn't get the perspective of the PDP as well to see how they plan to deal with their own challenge, because they declined the call. But let's go on to the mails.
Yeah. Professor Nakana's one is the first to take here this morning, talking about deepening democracy. There you have it. Nigerians must rise now against the elites working assiduously behind the scene to truncate what he calls the Electronic Transfer of Results Act. Many of them know that they can win. Many of them know that they can never win a free and fair election.
Okay, this next one comes from Oladile, who says the concept of democracy should first be experienced by students from nursery, primary, secondary schools, so as to accommodate those who end up not going into tertiary institutions. Students who are involved in their own governance are far from invested in those rules. If students feel they have a voice, their innate sense of fairness is activated when rules are violated. But if students have no voice, they feel rules are arbitrary and capricious. They will even be more likely to act out and display aggressive, belligerent, and defiant behaviors while growing up.
Festus Akinboyewa says the 9th National Assembly's passage of the amended electoral law, which now gives the legal backing to INEC to transmit election results electronically, will be their greatest achievement if it eventually signed into law. There is no doubt that electronic transmission of election results will strengthen our democracy, increase turnout, and eliminate fraud. Kudos to them.
Well, Famous says you can't give what you don't have. Our political parties lack organization. Once parties cannot organize themselves internally, how can they organize a country? We have to take a very serious, reasonable look at our politicians and political parties.
Demola Lalade says internal democracy of political parties is the main problem bedeviling the political space in Nigeria. If political parties can be transparent in conducting credible primaries within their parties, we will see the change we all have been yearning for. This will allow many more credible and competent people to emerge to contest elections within the political space, thus producing the kind of leaders we desire to build a country.
Well, Isioma has been wowed this morning. So Isioma says, wow, wow, wow. Professor Terry Jagger has said it all. He's saying it as it is. Bravo, we need more people to be courageous, speak truth to power. Nigeria is rapidly descending into trenches, and people on the sidelines saying nothing or tacitly encouraging the disintegration of the country. We must all work together to rescue Nigeria, first by truly electing credible people to move the country forward. Hopefully, with electronic transmission of results, that can be achieved. On a second thought, where has Jega been all along with this thinking?
Well, good thinking. Well, Lauren Loba and Obia Emmanuel, we got your mails to the soul. Thank you so much for being a part of our program today.
Yeah.
And that's the program today. Thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of your morning. I'm Ayo Makinde. Stay safe.
I'm Chamberlain, sir. Have a happy holiday.